A word of thanks to our amazing sponsors who have made this conference possible: Real Presence Radio, University of Mary, St. Joseph Parish in Williston, Jerome Distributing, Cashman Nursery, and Eastgate and Parkway Funeral Home. I think they deserve a round of applause. We now welcome our first keynote speaker to the stage. Today we have the privilege of hearing from Dr. Ray Guarendi. Dr. Guarendi is a Catholic father of 10 adopted children, a clinical psychologist, author, professional speaker, and national radio and television host. His radio show, The Doctor Is In, can be heard on more than 440 stations, including our own Real Presence Radio and Sirius XM Channel 130. His TV show, Living Right with Dr. Ray, can be seen on EWTN Global Catholic Network and is aired in 140 countries. On a personal note, Dr. Ray and I have some familiarity with Kent State University. This may be the first time that two Kent State students meet in North Dakota. I think that's a record. So would you please welcome Dr. Ray Guarendi.
Your Excellency, I sure hope I don't fall off of this, because if I do, this will all be mine. I was bragging about you folks. I was telling people I'm going to Bismarck. Those folks are rugged. They eat climate for dinner. And I show up here yesterday, it's 82 degrees with a slight breeze out of the left. I'm glad what happened out there happened. Now it redeems my faith in your sturdiness. My wife is a convert to the Catholic faith. She had a tough time with confession. She understood the theology, but she couldn't get it through her head that when you go to confession, you gotta confess your own sins, not your husband's. Bless me, Father, for Ray has sinned. She made her first confession when she was 39. Now, gentlemen, you read these marriage books, they all tell you the same thing. Be on your knees for your wife. Okay, fine. I read those books. She goes into confessional, I get on my knees, and I stay there the whole time she's in there. So I took a week off from work. She came out. Honey, what do you think? You're right, Ray. I feel clean. Good. So what'd you tell Father? I'm not telling you that. You can tell me you're not bound by the seal. I'm not telling you, Ray. I figured it out. If you want to know what your spouse or your kid tells Father, the priest, in the confessional, you kind of got to go in the back door. So, honey, what did you get for penance? Now, if you know what they got for penance, you can kind of reason backward to how rotgut they were. She said, I guess I could tell you that. I got a rosary. You know, a rosary, that's not bad for 40 years of pagan muck. She said, with the stations of the cross at every bead. Oh, kind of wish you'd have told me that before I married you. Then she asked me, okay, Ray, what do you usually get for penance? Me? Most of the time? Half a sign of the cross. Sometimes a quarter. That's hardly enough time to levitate. The part about the 10 kids is true. And that's why I'm here. It's quieter here, and it smells better. People find out I got 10 kids, I always get this. All right, now that you have your own children, what have you learned? I've learned something very critical. I rarely took them out in public. You take them out in public, invariably they're going to pull some stunt. Embarrasses the heck out of you. If people know you're a shrink, it's worse, because you can almost hear them thinking out loud. Let's just see what Mr. Psycho Man does about this one. I figure it this way. Many of you have raised your children. You know this. First 9, 10 years of life out in public, they embarrass us. After that, Dad, you embarrass them. Oh, man, come on, Dad. Don't wear the pants with the feathers. Dad, don't wave at me when people are looking right at us, and I'm not going to pull your finger. Why do you suppose that parents want to speak to me these days? All settings, family, therapy, friends, church, school. 80% of the time, this is the reason. Discipline. Okay, Mr. Expert Man, you tell me how to get him to stay in bed. I can't get him to stay in bed. He chews his way down through the bedroom floor, drops into the family room. I'm back. You'll never be free. You'll never have another child. I'll be in your bed till I'm 16, that's why. And that girl's mouth, that snotty, snarly, you know, if I'd have talked to my parents that way, my head would have been rolling down the hallway. And the school people, they don't help. You know what they did last year? They closed during June, July, and August. I actually had to live with my own child during the daytime. Now, many of you have raised your children. I believe you are the last generation across the board to know who the parent was. You parented out of the mindset, I am mom, you are not. Nowadays, we got these young parents so skittish with all of our psychologically enlightened ways. You leave him on the pot for 4 minutes too long, he's going to grow up to be a tattooed-faced motorcycle gang member on Springer. You named him John because you were hoping it would help in the toilet training. I was 3 years old when I said this to my mother. I don't like you. She looked at me. Raymond, you're a little behind. I stopped liking you last year. That was back before you could psychologically smack parents around, you know. One of my kids tells me I don't like you, so what? I got 5 or 6 who do. Any given moment, I got a 50% approval rating. Parents will say to me, tell me how to discipline less. I finally figured it out. It's the best technique I've ever developed for disciplining less. Works for all children, all grandchildren, all parents, all grandparents. To discipline any child less, you must simply do one thing. Lower your standards. Get them low enough, you don't have to discipline at all. I told you, quit doing drugs in the living room when we have company. We discipline because we love. Because we can't establish morals and character without it. I don't care how positive and affirming you are. I don't care how much active listening you do. I don't care how many win-win scenarios you set up. Without discipline, there is no morals and character. And you know why else we discipline, dear people? Because every person in here is the kindest, most gentle teacher that that child or grandchild is ever going to have. If we don't do it now, because you're tired, or you feel guilty, or you think he won't like you, or your mother-in-law already thinks you are the biggest she-witch to fly the face of the earth, that child will be disciplined. A judge, a landlord, an army sergeant, a police officer, an employer, I shudder at this next one, a wife. Somebody's going to teach them. And the world hurts. The world doesn't give mitigating circumstances. Some employer is not going to say, you are just so cranky. Now, did you get a nap today? You go home and rest up until you're ready. I'll cover. I'm fond of telling folks discipline without love may be harsh. Love without discipline is child abuse. Because ultimately, the world will discipline that child, and we don't want that. There's an interesting phenomenon that occurs in my office. A parent will come in, describe a litany of trouble about this long, then they'll say this: I think I'm giving you the wrong impression. Overall, he's a pretty good kid. How so? Well, he's not on drugs or anything like that. One of the new moral high bars, he's not on drugs. I ask my clients, what do you want looking back at you at age 22? What would you hope to be able to say about that child? Now, no guarantees, but hope. If you are content to say, well, you know, hey, given the way kids are turning out nowadays, I'm counting my blessings. Parole officer says one of the nicest kids he has. I tell them, you don't have to parent that hard. You'll probably have a kid not on drugs. But if you wish to look at that child at 22 and hope to be able to say something like this, he's a beautiful human being. Morals, compassion, seeks God. I think he's 1 in 100. Then I challenge him. You ready to be a 1 in 100 parent? Dear people, we can't parent like them anymore. Look at you. This is a sliver of a crowd. You understand this? Look at you. You've given up a Saturday to come here, to spend time with our Lord, to listen to people. You love your families. I don't know. There's no doubt about that. Either that or you got no life whatsoever. Either way, you're unique in that culture. And you can't raise children like them anymore. The shrinks don't think like you do. Do a little test. Go to the computer, type in child, self-esteem, search. Last time I looked, 100 million plus options. The experts believe that self-esteem is the preeminent moral virtue. Type in child, humility, search. A fraction. When is the last time you heard a secular expert talk about humility? My humility is something I'm very proud of. Gone too fast for that whole row right there. I was like, you know. I wrote a book. I got a new book coming out, by the way. The 3 Most Humble People I Know and How I Taught the Other 2. Can you imagine our Lord going up to the apostles? Simon, there for a while I toyed with changing your name to Peter, but I decided against it. I didn't know what that would do to your self-image. You know, you've always seen yourself as a Simon. I go changing your whole identity now. I don't know what untoward psychological effects that might have. However, I've spoken to our Father, and he believes that you have a future in this operation. If you can conceive it, you can believe it. If you can believe it, you can achieve it. 12 more weeks of Tony Robbins management, Simon, you'll run this outfit. Probably not. I always wanted to go to confession like the politicians. Bless me, Father. Mistakes were made. And I'd like to apologize if God took something I did out of context, misinterpreted it, and became offended by it. I'm sorry for his sensitivity. At one point, my children were 12, 11, 10, 10, 9, 7, 4, 3, 2, and baby. And as Nick mentioned, they're blessings through adoption. Some of you may be adoptive parents, grandparents. One of the things that's great about adoption, the agencies don't tell you this. I had to figure it out on my own about the 4th kid. If you adopt in December, you still get the tax deduction for the whole year. They pay for themselves that first year, then you start to fall behind because they eat more. But you cut back on the food, you can break even September, somewhere near October. Now, my wife and I have had this ongoing conflict, got worse as we got more kids. Ladies, I believe you will agree with me because, first of all, my wife does not work for a living. I don't know what she does. But you quote me, I'll deny I was even here. I've seen what the woman does. I want no part of what the woman does. When the kids were little, she'd take them to a grocery store. I'd go. If I was heavily sedated, I would go. Had to see it, strung out behind her like ducks, hands at their sides, not allowed to touch anything. They would not deviate 6 inches either way out of a straight line the whole 2 hours they were in there. No, they wouldn't. Leg irons wouldn't let them. I got 3 white kids, 2 Hispanic kids, 2 biracial kids, 3 black kids. People would look at my wife. Some of them were pretty bold. Is some kind of club or something? Some of them wouldn't say a whole lot, but I could read their eyes. That major dork don't realize that ain't all his. I suspect her, but I can't catch her. Now, my kids have what the experts would call risk factors. In psychological parlance, a risk factor is anything that would make a kid tougher to raise. Poor prenatal care, poor postnatal care, abuse in the womb, neglect in the womb, high maternal stress, low birth weights, heavy drug exposure, crack, narcotics, barbiturates, heroin, cocaine, nicotine, marijuana, alcohol. My son Peter, birth mom was told, you're pregnant. Don't worry about it. There's a blood clot growing next to the baby grows, the blood clot grows, the blood clot wins, the problem solved. The problem made it. He was born 2 months premature, 1 month intensive care, but Petey made it. My daughter Elizabeth. Birth mom got pregnant in the 7th grade. Nick went to Akron, Ohio to get it taken care of. She didn't realize she was in her 7th month. Now, this is a pro-life group. Groups I used to talk to a lot are not pro-life. At best, they were amateur life. And I used to watch their faces as I described this because their attitude was, no, that's not true. That little 13-year-old girl was in her 7th month. She didn't realize the babies are bigger in their 7th month. You can't flush them out, suck them out. You got to pull them out. You can't pull them out in one piece because they come apart. You got to crush skulls and rip off limbs. That's how you get them out. She panicked. She left there. She called us the next day. We were not expecting a 10th kid. We thought we were done at 9. I guess you could say Lizzie was an unplanned adoption. We weren't practicing safe phone. My son Samuel, 2 weeks before due date, 35-year-old birth mom was told something is terribly wrong. We'd like to test. Tentative diagnosis, corpus callosum agenesis. Severe neurological birth defect, worst case scenario, institution for life. You got to figure everybody in that birth mom's whole world was against her adopting this kid. But she gave birth to Sammy. Sammy's 28. They call him Sergeant G at Fort Hood. It was a shadow on the ultrasound. The test was totally inaccurate. So my kids have this confluence of developmental gunk, that should make them harder to raise and slower to socialize, more impulsive, more immature, slower to form consciences. Yeah, I got some like that. I wouldn't consider any of my 10 children strong-willed. Well, this dude is one toke over the line, sweet Moses. How could you have 10 kids under those circumstances, not consider any of them strong-willed, when people, you know how we call children nowadays, parents, grandparents, mind of her own, stubborn, streak a mile wide, so independent and so determined. Challenging child, very challenging child, very high maintenance youngster, very, very high maintenance. We talk to the pediatrician, we have a difficult child. Difficult child is redundant. Am I delusional? I think there's a simple explanation. The strongest willed of my 10 children is not stronger willed than his mother. We got so many strong-willed kids nowadays, dear people, because the big people have lost will. We're not as sure of ourselves. We're not as confident. We're not as authoritative. Many of you raised your children. You had the look. Remember the look? You look at a kid, now he looks back at you. What are you looking at? You want a piece of this? The look is dead. Children haven't changed. It's the big people who have changed. We're not as sure of ourselves. Sometimes I'll tease my clients. What would your mother have done had you talked to her the way your daughter is talking to you? No, I didn't. Why not? You were a teenage girl once. Why not? I may have felt like it, but I didn't do it very often. Why? I knew. You knew what? Something would happen. What? I don't know. Why don't you know? It never happened. Why didn't it happen? I never did it. Why didn't you do it? Something would have happened. What? I don't know. Who's on first? I don't know. Third base. It's an Abbott and Costello routine, but you see what it speaks of, dear people? I call it the perception of authority. My dad went to God before I was born. I know this. Lord, I'm going to raise a whole bunch of kids. I don't want to complicate the whole affair. Give me 8 or 10 phrases. I'll just repeat them over and over and over. We got tons of dads in here. You do not get this many dads at talks. So gentlemen, I want to digress here for a moment. You know what I'm hearing from the ladies? The ladies are telling me more and more that they are the authorities in their homes. They set the standards, they set the tone, they do the disciplining, and Disney dad over here, Mr. Good Time, Mr. Easygoing, laid back, oblivious, Mr. Not Notice Nothing, Keep the Peace, Mr. Honey, I was that way when I was a kid. I think I turned out pretty good. And the women are thinking, let's gather the relatives and vote. More and more women are telling me they're the main authorities in their house, and we guys, we're along for the ride. Do what your mother says. Just do what your mother says. I do what your mother says. Everybody does what your mother says. You want to live? Gentlemen, marriage soundbite. Protect that woman. I don't think there's a guy in here that would let another human being talk to his wife the way that child or grandchild talks to his wife on a regular basis. Next time you hear her locked into a battle with a kid, don't close your eyes, sit in the Barca lounge, or think, oh my gosh, if I didn't know better, I wouldn't know which one of them's a 9-year-old. Get in there. Protect that woman. I think all the ladies are clapping on that one. That's not just your mom, or as it were, your grandma, that you're talking to. That's my wife. Now you go sit down, because I'm going to find out what she wants me to do about this. Well, you can't protect without something in writing. And then I'm going to do more. And I'll tell you what, gentlemen, that woman knows you got her 6, which means her back. She will feel very affectionate towards you. Sometimes I'll give my boys a couple bucks. Go down, give your mother grief. I'll be right down. Worked pretty good till she found out I was only giving them a couple bucks. Oh, I'm worth a couple bucks. By the way, you know the definition of impending middle age? It's when your wife gives up intimacy for Lent and you don't realize it till Monday after Easter. These guys are looking at me like, what's your point, man? I know when Lent is, January 6th, August 28th. Bishop, when are they going to shorten up that church calendar there? That Lent's long. My dad went to God, and there's a lot of dads, and we dads all sound the same, and I finally figured out why that is. You know how moms have to go to Lamaze classes to learn how to be ma's? She's looking at me like, did I leave the iron on? Dads must go to La Paz classes to get their phrases. First time I heard this when I was 3 years old. You gonna cry? I'm gonna give you something to cry about. First father ever to fling that one around. Raymond, you go get me something to spank you with. Fathers are generous people. My dad was. Always giving me something. Dad, I can't shovel the snow. I got a bellyache. Raymond, I'm going to give you a bellyache. Ever notice that your father's always giving you something? You are not going to find, I'm going to give you a bellyache in any parenting book I have looked. It is not there by today's enlightened psychological standards. My father was a barbarian. A parenting Neanderthal. Judge it by the acid question. Not was he psychologically correct. Dear people, a culture is in trouble when psychological correctness is replacing moral correctness. When more and more people are asking the question, is it normal? Rather than, is it right? It's perfectly normal for a 3-year-old to melt down fit on you. It's not good. 15-year-olds will get snotty and disrespectful if you let them. It's not right. The question is not, is it normal? Sin's normal. Is it good and right? For my father, high school dropout during World War II, wasn't what the experts would consider psychologically slick. His discipline worked about 50% of the time. That is sky high. How? Two things. He loved me desperately. And I know every one of you love those kids in your charge desperately. I know that. That's why I don't get in front of groups like this and say, you need to be more positive and affirming, more active listening, less passive listening, 5+ statements for every neutral statement for maximum self-esteem results. You're very good at the warm love part. It's the second part of the equation that now gives parents and grandparents fits. When my dad said to me, Raymond, you better sit down, please. I asked you once, leave your sister alone. I sat down. I couldn't conceive of getting up. 6 of our kids we got at infancy, 4 we got later. Twins had a wretched history. Birth mom ingested every toxin she could get a hold of. We don't know where the kids were the first 2 years of their lives, shunted from home to home to home to home. Foster parents were sweet people, but they didn't discipline them. They let them kind of run. They felt guilty. Remember what I said about love without discipline is child abuse, because the world is going to place a consequence on you that's going to be a rough consequence? We've since found out that my son and daughter, John and Joanna, had a chance to be adopted prior to us. We weren't picked first. We had 4 kids at that time. They weren't even looking at us. The first 2 families backed out. They met the children. No, thank you. We were hoping for something a little more along the lines of a child. You see what I mean, dear folks? What was the real world consequence for those 2 little 4-year-olds? Loss of a mom and a dad 3 times. I got to admit, it didn't look too good. First visit there, Johnny punches me in the face, attempts to strangle my wife, kicks the foster father about 14 times during one of his multiple eruptions. We walked out of there. My wife was just ticking. She said, Ray, we got to rethink this. I don't think the tax deduction's worth it. I said, honey, you got 2 tax deductions plus the credits. They never made John go to bed. He roamed the house. He tore stuff up. He challenged him for 2.5 years. First weekend visit to our house, my weasel wife says, Raymond, why don't you put the children to bed tonight? Honey, I'll give you $100 if you do it. I don't have time for that. I'm writing a parenting book. All right, guys, let's go. Come on, heading for bed. Everybody came running except Johnny. Johnny just stood there. No, go bed. I am not a big guy, but I'm 170 pounds. I've been a weightlifter all my life. I know one thing for certain. I am stronger than the biggest, baddest 4-year-old in the whole world. The child is going to bed. So I went over, and I bent down. Kind of like the veterinarians tell you, don't tower over a wild animal. Let him smell your hand. I put my hands on his shoulders. Now, he could tell by my grip. This was, how shall we say, a non-negotiable psychological interface. Now, at that point, he erupts. Head starts spinning around. Green stuff's coming out. He's leaking out of every body orifice. Now, Bishop, I don't know if this is theologically correct, but I got this theory that this is why God put holes in them, to leak off the pressure. You know, most of them leak up here, but you can get leakers down here, you know. And sometimes you get pukers. Now, the interesting thing about a puker, when they get really upset, they throw up. But you outgrow that. You develop out of it. You can't do it after a couple of years. But wouldn't it be great if you still could? He picks you up for your first date. You're not real crazy about the guy. So he asks, can I call you again? You don't say a word. You go over to his passenger door. Even he could pick up on that nonverbal. Johnny wasn't going to go to bed, so I picked him up over my head off to the side because he was dripping. I wanted to convey an impression here, you know, this is the big guy in charge. So I carried him to bed. I put him in bed. I put my hands on his chest, and I just held him immobile. He couldn't twitch. I didn't hurt him. We'd already said prayers. We'd already brushed teeth. We'd already done the bedtime ritual. Johnny, it's bedtime, son. Daddy's not going to let you move until I decide you're going to stay. And please don't get up after I go, because I'll come back. You should have seen the look in his face. I went from Disney World to the county jail. My son Andrew was 6 years old at the time. We had 654-431 at that time, and I really had to stop Johnny quick. Andrew's in the top bunk. Andrew, would you please talk to your brother? Johnny, if Daddy says go to bed, you better go to bed. I remember one time I didn't go to bed. You're not going to like what's going to happen, Johnny. You know that? You think he's going to leave, Johnny? He doesn't leave. He goes out in the hallway, and he stands out there, and he waits. And then if you come out, he's going to crack your bottom. He don't care what the caseworker says. Andrew, that's enough? You sound like Mom. How long do you think I had to hold that boy before he went... It was under a minute. Is that because I'm such a great disciplinarian? No, my wife's a far better disciplinarian than I am. Perception. He knew this guy was going to be Daddy, but he didn't quite know how to read me. And I looked like I really meant it. Plus, I had a tattoo put right there. Said, born to kick butt. We are a microwave culture. We want results. We want them certainly. We want them now. I fall prey to this. I stick my mug in the microwave. I punch in 60 seconds. And then about the 30-second mark, I'm doing this. Come on. What's with this thing? I haven't got all minute. Let's go. This has impacted our discipline. We want results. How long is this going to take? I've been doing this for 3 months, as though the child is supposed to say, oh, mother, I've been so blind. I see what you're saying. That's why you're the grown-up. I'm the child. It's all so clear to me now. Let's hold hands, sing Kumbaya around the campfire. Parents will come to me. I've tried everything with this child. Nothing works. Finally, I got so frustrated, I sent him next door to play and moved the family while he was gone. Bishop, when was the last time you had somebody come to confession? Bless me, Father, well, why don't you just bless me, okay? Because as long as I've been alive, I really don't have any sins left. You know what I mean? How long does it take me to conquer a sin? 5 years, 8 years, 10 years? That's long enough, isn't it? Something's wrong with me if I haven't learned by now. Or are you like me? Bless me, Father. Look, let's save us both a lot of time. Here's the list, okay? It's the same stuff I've been telling you for the last 40-some years. How come we're allowed to do that, but if this kid doesn't get this after 4 months of gone to the corner, we're like, what is with him? When is he going to get this? He's so strong-willed. Alexander, Bell, you guys embarrass me when I'm on the phone. You know that? I sound like a crazed lunatic when people call here. We have a new house rule. From this point forward, when I get on the phone, please be respectful. If not, I will excuse myself from the phone. I'll put you in your rooms for the rest of the call so I can speak in peace. And I'll come and get you when I think it's time. And please don't come out, because I'll ground you for the day. And by the way, respect includes none of this. Clients will say to me, how long do I have to do this before I get peace on the phone? And I'll say to them, perhaps 10 times, 25, 55. I really don't know. That'll be $80. And it doesn't matter, because you got to do what you said, however long it takes. You won't get away with this. Oh, hello, Bishop. How are you? Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. We'd be flattered to be the role model family for the church children love in. Bishop, could you just excuse me for 1 second, please? I'm going to have a little love chat with the children. Yeah, they're precious blessings from God. You know how that is. We love them desperately. I wish we had 14 or 15 of them. All right, we love you too, Bishop. All right, I'll get them on the extension. Yes, they're getting antsy. We're half hour past rosary circle. Yeah, we still pray it on our knees in broken glass in Aramaic, except when we're levitating, huh? Okay, all right, we love you too, Bishop. Peace to you, Harmony, Aquarius. Thank you. I'll be right back. You're going to die. I'm going to rip your tongue out of your throat, wrap it around the fence with a buzzer to pick at you, little maggot. Get away from her. What's that, Bishop? No, that's a neighbor lady. She's been speaking to her kids like that for years. We do pray for her. Yes. Well, I'll ask her to come, but I don't think she will. She doesn't like kids. A culture says, why? A culture says, would you please explain to me why that human being is acting that way? Fallen human nature does not incline us to look here first. Fallen human nature inclines us to look this way. I do marriage counseling. Once every 5 or 6 years, I'd like someone to come in my office and begin like this. You know why I'm here? Because it has finally occurred to me I am extremely difficult to live with. And I had to drag my spouse in because I want my spouse to help me take a hard look at myself to see where I can improve in this marriage. And we do this with kids. I don't see kids. People say, well, don't you see children? Oh, no, of course not. I work with their parents. I work with their grandparents, their aunts, their uncles, the adults in their life. That's where the change takes place, through the big people. Unfortunately, we tend to search outwards. Before I go, let me just give you a couple of the more outwards. Diet. Cut out anything red, cut out anything sweet, cut out anything artificial, cut out anything that remotely tastes good. Give them a dry cracked wheat, brown berry, tofuti sandwich on bean sprouts. This kid will get better math scores, kiss his sister on the lips before he paints murals on the church ceiling. There's one problem with diet. It doesn't have a whole lot of research support. It's good for health and nutrition. Our kids' diets are atrocious. And more kids are systemically allergic, and we can't quite figure that out why. But the idea that if I eat this, I'm going to act like this has a very weak link there. That notion has been swallowed whole by our culture. He went to that party last night. He had 3 Reese's peanut butter cups, 2 cans of Mountain Dew, and a Kit Kat. He came home and torched the dog. Now, I told those people, no Kit Kat. It was the Kit Kat. Probably not. Birth order, middle child syndrome. I tell parents, if you're that afraid of middle child syndrome, don't have an odd number of kids. If you got an odd number, have another one. Give one away. Wipe out that middle spot. Now, the truth on birth order, it only holds one place, the tiniest bit, oldest only. As a group, they tend to be a little more independent, a little more achieving. Maybe they develop a shade quicker. I don't think that's their position. We change our styles. That first kid, you boiled everything she came within 50 feet of. Last kid, you throw him this big dirt ball, say, here, chew on that. Wipe your mouth off in a gas can before you come in the house. First kid, dual videotape of every burp and bowel movement he ever had. Last kid, 1 snapshot at the birth, 1 at the wedding rehearsal dinner. Dad, how come I got no pictures? That's not true, son. Your sister did a popsicle stick sketch of you in 1st grade. We kept it. Besides, you look like your sister. Use her pictures. First kid, you sneak into his room every night. You stick a mirror underneath his nostrils. Make sure he's still breathing. Last kid, you tell the dog, get out of the crib. Don't lick her in the face. No, I was talking to the baby. You don't know where that mouse been, poor dog. Somebody asked my wife when our 9th one, Peter, was about 2-3 months old, is Petey sleeping through the night yet? My wife says, I don't know if he is, we are. You know, you get to that point. And there's a lot of grandparents out here, and I got to tell you, you grandparents are treacherous people because you lurk, you lie in wait for us to have children who do to us what we did to you. My mother was at our house some years ago, sitting at the island, not saying a word. Now, my mother's Italian. If she doesn't say something every 7 or 8 seconds, she's seriously depressed. Ma, what are you thinking? Well, Ray, I'll tell you what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that you and Randy are getting very sloppy in your parenting. Huh? Elizabeth gets away with murder. Now, at that time, Lizzie was the youngest. She was about 7 or 8. I said, Ma, what do you mean? The other kids tried any of this, you'd have stopped them dead in their tracks. Lizzie does the exact same thing. You take a picture of it, and you post it. Mom, wait. Lizzie doesn't need much discipline. She's a very compliant child. I'll give you an example. Last night I noticed, about a half hour past her bedtime, it was about 3 a.m., all I had to say was, Elizabeth, bedtime, please. Immediate cooperation. She took out her cigarette. She put it in the ashtray. Now, the other kids flicked their butts on the floor, not Lizzie, in the ashtray. Tell me I'm getting sloppy. And some ideas are so absurd that only Kent State profs could actually believe them. And one of these is that there are no differences between little boys, little girls. There's no differences between men and women. We're all just socialized into constructs, powerful but gender norming forces. You give a little girl a front end loader. She'll carry it around for 4 years, become a special ops tank commando. You give a little boy a baby doll. He'll carry it around for 4 years, become a nurturant preschool teacher. 50% of little boys will immediately rip the head off that baby doll and turn it into a machine gun. We are wired different. God says it, human history says it, the research says it. For example, little girls, women, are more verbal than little boys, men. They talk earlier. They talk better. They talk longer. That's why if a mom drifts into a discipline trap, it's usually something along these lines. Talk, talk, nag, nag, repeat, repeat, negotiate. Talk, talk, nag, nag, repeat, repeat, negotiate. If a dad drifts into a discipline trap, it's usually something along these lines. Tolerate, tolerate, oblivious, oblivious, ignore, ignore, kill. Tolerate, tolerate, oblivious, oblivious. You women are so aware. You notice detail. You're made to notice detail. You notice everything about everybody at all times, forever. To be used upon men who get to a point in our lives, if we notice our wives are out there, we get extra credit. Hey guys, when's the last time one of our buddies did this to us? Yo, Rock, Max. You guys notice anything different about me? I mean, I've been alive a long time, and I have yet to say to one of my friends, oh, cute top. My little girls would come downstairs before Mass and do this. Sarah, what's the matter? Sarah, it's 25 feet from your bed to here. What could possibly have upset you in that distance? Okay, fine. This is touching me right here. I don't like the way this touches me right here. My socks are twisted. They got strings on them, and they won't stay in a straight line. My boys will come down. James, is that pee on your shirt? Can you see it now, Dad? Psychological correctness is a quagmire. You'll overthink, you'll overanalyze, you'll overtalk, you'll overnegotiate, you'll underenjoy. You know, many of you have 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9 kids. And I'll tell you what, that's the only sin left in our culture. You can have physical relations with anybody, anywhere, anyhow. Just don't be a mom married to the same person that has more than 1.87 children, because that is the new cultural sin. And if you have 3, are you done? I mean, do you know how this is happening? Do you have a TV? You know, when somebody asks you, are these all your children? You simply say this: oh, of course not. Don't be silly. The oldest is at home with the triplets. Of course you can get better. Of course you can gain skills. Of course you can buy my books and tapes. A little subliminal advertising in there, Nick. They taught you how to do that when you're reading that teleprompter there, you know. But there comes a point, dear people, where so many good people are just so frustrated at raising children. Yeah, I had 10 kids, and they pulled all kinds of scrap and all kinds of stunts. But my wife was really, truly in charge. When she said, go to the corner, please, they went to the corner, please, because if they didn't, all kinds of things were going to happen that they didn't like. And she did it early. She had discipline, money in the bank, and she could live off the interest. I conclude this at pretty much every group I talk to, because it is a phenomenon, I believe, never before in Christian history. Most of Christian history, what you were raised with, you stayed with. Yes, people trickled off, but not in the numbers like today. When you look at the stats among young people, it's 50, 60, 70% leave the faith they were raised in. That's never happened before. The culture is a hideous thing. It's very seductive. It's very good at what it does. Many of you have watched your children leave the faith. You've watched your children outright reject it in hostility, or indifferently drift from it, or still call themselves devout Catholics, but they practice the new atheism. The new atheism is, there is a God, but he thinks just like me. That's a tough atheism. So what I want to do today, for any of you who are beating yourself up over this, wondering where you messed up, how did you fall short? Where were you deficient? You know what? It was his fault. It was his fault. I wanted to pray all 15 decades of the rosary. No. He only prayed 5, and he let him sit on the couch. Spiritual sloppiness. So if you're beating yourself up, I'm going to prove to you logically that your days of beating yourself up cease today. Unless you think you're superior to someone, and I'll show that in a second. Please just answer me yes or no. Is there a God? Christ God? Was he sinless? Could he perform miracles? Did he have a perfect understanding of human nature? Could he get most people to follow him? Oh, let me see if I understand this. You think you're better at this than the God-man. Can you do a miracle? Can you even do a crummy card trick? Dear people, our Lord himself couldn't get most people to follow him. Who do we think we are? Like there's some kind of spiritual formula, spiritual correctness, that if you just do it right, your kids are going to embrace the faith, and if they don't, it's you who screwed up? I got 10 kids. Some of them may serve the church. Some of them may serve time. One gone to Penn State. One gone to State Penn. As my wife says, we are not their savior. We are there to raise them as best we could in the time that we had them, and we are there to pray for them. But now, this life is between them and God. We'll do what we can, but you gotta know when to shut your mouth. There's advice given to mothers and mother-in-laws on their daughter or daughter-in-law's wedding day. Sit up, shut up, and wear beige. Well, that's pretty good advice for when you're just aching to open your mouth on how your kids are raising their kids, and they don't want to hear it, and they made it real clear they don't want to hear it, Mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, watch out. That's a particularly treacherous relationship. Be very, very careful. I want to close with a touching marriage story. Many of you have had long-term marriages, and that's got something you got to respect. Elderly gentleman and his wife were shopping. She bends over, she picks up a can of clean peaches, sticks it under her coat, tries to walk out without paying. Woo! Goes before the judge. What'd you do? I stole a can of peaches. How many in a can? 12. 12 days in the county jail then. Her husband's shocked at this. He can't believe he heard this. Your Honor, please, may I speak up? Go ahead. She also stole a can of peas. You're a delight. I could talk to you all day. Thanks. Diocese, huh? I went to Case Western. Yes.